but it's re. Oh,
Hi
God.
guys, welcome back to the podcast. Joined again back with Rowan, and we're going to be talking about transhumanism. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting topic indeed. Just to start it off, I personally think that this will be the next evolution of mankind. I think immediately you start seeing wearable devices and watches that you see on Fitbit and Apple and Samsung watches. It's already started, and prosthetic devices as well. When somebody breaks an arm, they're now being replaced with robotic arms in a sense. So I think that's already uh, started the rise of transhumanism. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think all you have to do is look to the mainstream now, and you see everyone trying to grab a Apple Watch or something that can accessorize themselves with, that is basically tied to their human nature, and it keeps going deeper and deeper. But I think one day we will integrate somewhat. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's up to debate, really. Personally, I think it's quite a bad thing, but I know there's people that would argue that it's probably for the betterment of mankind.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think us guys here will see it's a bad thing because it's but the idea of transhumanism is immortality, living forever. If you shift your consciousness to a robot, a robot doesn't die. And me personally, I wouldn't want to live forever because you'd get bored of the game of life at the end. But for the higher ups, the elites, and for people that want to escape their reality, this would be a quote unquote good opportunity for them. But
Yeah.
in the reality, it's not so great. But it's something that is expected to happen. You can't do anything about it. You just gotta go with the flow, really.
Yeah, there's not much power we have as just regular human beings to be able to stop whatever is progressing in the script. So I think you're better off just watching it from a neutral standpoint and being like, well, it is what it is. I can choose to opt out if I want to. You don't have to necessarily go with the narrative and become a transhumanoid or whatever, a robot person. I mean, there are definitely benefits, I think, arguably. I mean, like things with Neuralink for Elon Musk, you can argue that, or this technology will, or so he says it will help, say, people who have lost limbs and things, or people who've got to walk, been paralyzed through war, or just an accident. It'll help them to begin to walk again. And obviously, you have even my dad, he's got. I know it's not the same, but he's got a metal replacement for his knee. So it's sort of like he's not. Do you know what I mean? He's not full human.
Yeah. He's still human at least, just not
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, but it's like, then how far does that meshing go between humans and machine? Will people start to opt into want more of the machine than the man? It's a question that can be asked, but I think it's quite scary at the same time, because it disconnects us from who we are as humans. Like, we've been put on this earth to obviously be humans, and there's a whole lot of questions about the AI. Like, is it stable? Could it go rogue? You never know. Literally never know.
You often hear in movies about AI looking to take over the world, and transhumanism is a huge factor in that for sure. Like, computers are getting smarter due to the amount of processing power they're now taking in. That's why, if you're familiar with, the tests that say prove that you're not a robot and you have to match the letters.
Oh yeah. The capture things.
Yeah. What if then you are a robot when you become a transhuman?
Whoa. Yeah, what are you going to do? What if you're part human,
exactly.
part robot? What do you tick? You have to say that you're a robot, and then it won't let you in anything. You won't be able to get internet access. That's how they're going to lock you out. That's how the elite's going to get you. They're going to say, no, you're a robot. You can't come on this website because you might have malicious intents.
That's quite possible.
You can reboats, so
it's very interesting. But yeah, I think transhumanism, it's very interesting because I personally don't know anyone that is for it or against it, because like the majority will be against it for sure. But look, most people are wearing Apple Watches. They're taking part in the activities already, but when it comes to light in the future, they'll all be against it, despite them wearing wearable devices and getting distracted by things happening in the mainstream.
Yeah. Well, I've always felt a bit weird about getting like an Apple Watch. I think there is a good reason to get them in that, like, you can track how many steps you've done, you can track your calories for the day, you can track your exercises and things like that, and you can communicate, you can talk on it, you can pay for things with it. But I don't know, it feels a bit too close to home in that literally it's a big tech company that can have access to essentially everything you're doing in the day, like how many steps you're doing, how many calories you're doing. You know what I mean? It's like it's unavoidable, and it's so they can get such a good understanding of who you are, like even to the finest details, such as how many steps you do in a day. So you know what I mean? It's a bit close for comfort.
Yeah, and we know what big companies like to do with that data. You know, I don't think we need to discuss what they do. It's pretty self-explanatory, really.
Well, it makes complete sense. It's just the economy, isn't it? It's internet economy.
Yeah.
Selling up. Well, what's the statement? It's like, if the product is free, you are the product.
Yeah.
Like I say, if you're using Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, it's like, oh, it's free. Oh my God, it's free. This product's cool. But then you are the product because you've basically been advertised to. So yeah.
So is that like saying you're being used by Instagram to fuel the algorithms?
Yeah. It's a whole economy, really, isn't it? You're selling the data to the advertising companies so they can sell you things, basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like what you talked about Neuralink earlier, they talked about engineering the brain. So how would that work? I mean,
engineering, I'm not sure.
Because obviously it's like what they change like the nerve impulses in your brain so they can dictate your thoughts, because it seems like it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like the fourth industrial revolution, as Klaus Schwab likes to call it. Klaus Schwab, the man, the evil James Bond villain. He says it's the fourth industrial revolution where we will mesh with machines and be able to communicate a lot quicker. Everything will be automated. We'll be communicating through thoughts, and we'll be able to do things unimagined before. And it's kind of scary because the same, like if you look at the internet now, it's controlled quite clearly by a central base.
Mm-hmm.
There are big tech companies that basically have monopoly over that, and people are always like, oh, it's a private company, they can do what they want, but at the same time they're the ones that control that space. So if, say, a big tech company rolled out these microchips or whatever and you could communicate through your brain, they are the ones that are going to have the monopoly and the capital over that. And essentially they could probably control your thoughts. They can manipulate you. Like there's always a catch. So say, oh, we'll give you your leg back, or you won't be paralyzed anymore, but we'll be controlling your thoughts and monitoring your thoughts. You can't say this, you can't say that, you can't think that, you can't even think anything anymore.
If they take control of your thoughts, what are you to think? But then the argument is, if you try not to think, it's impossible. So then is it you really thinking?
True.
And also, you mentioned about like communicating telepathically. I feel like they're trying to replace the original with the artificial, like, because you got to think about how did people used to communicate before language was even invented? And the most logical conclusion would be telepathy. So by controlling people's thoughts using AI and the idea of and transhumanism, it's going back to those roots, but in artificial form.
Yeah, very true. Very true. It's like they are creating their own digital space that they have control over. They're creating their like artificial version of what is already present on the planet. So it's basically like they want to be God and they can control and dictate everything. It comes back to like George Orwell's 1984 with the thought police and things like that, where anything you think is monitored. So it's quite scary, but yeah,
it's quite scary. But the reality is, you can't really live in fear. You have to focus on the present, because that's what you ultimately your life is determined by yourself. You control your actions and your thoughts and what you do to change your life. Living in fear is not going to help you improve yourself in a way. Like like yes, we're discussing about transhumanism and the potential benefits and implications, but it hasn't really fully occurred yet. We're just seeing a trend in the mainstream and in popular culture that this idea of transhumanism has spread across the world, in fact.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think even the obsession with, not to get too political, but the rainbow alphabet FC.
Yeah.
Those guys have sort of a fascination with removing themselves from labels and being associated with the human body, essentially. Like they want to move away from biology. And then how far does that fascination go? Is it a psyop potentially to make people think, oh yeah, I can be whatever I want? So let's start the trend of merging with a machine, and I'm not human anymore. It allows me to escape from this human physical body that I've been constrained by, this biology. They can choose, they have the option, and then they can become transhuman. Do you know what I mean? It's the next logical step to me from transgender, whatever you want to call it.
To transhuman.
It's like they're not comfortable being human anymore. So what is the next logical step?
That is a very good point. Never actually thought of that. I mean, transgender, transhuman. The word trans fits in there, and like it really is quite interesting, really, because if you separate yourself from your biological self, getting programmed by society to believe that you should identify yourself as this whatever they call themselves, and like you said, it will come to a point where it may get worse and they will call themselves as they'll become machines almost, because we know in this society people don't think for themselves, and they have something else thinking for them, and that something else might be in the future a robot.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think for the most part it is probably is a lot to do with robotics and algorithms that have been produced to, because obviously there's things like Twitter, which becomes an echo chamber, but these systems, these things that you promote, like the things you see on your feed on Twitter and things like that, are essentially run by an algorithm.
Yeah.
Based on like what you spend your most time looking at. So you're being just self-affirmed the thoughts, and you'll have, say, the odd message or something that will go against what you believe, essentially. And then it'll just reaffirm your previous point of view. So you just basically getting forced down a rabbit hole. There's no room for neutrality. So I had to get off to it. I mean, I had it for a long time. And there were times where I'd just sit and look at political discourse not all day, but obviously like an unhealthy amount. It was starting to make me physically ill. Like I could feel the side effects to my mental health. And it's because they program these algorithms and things to get you hooked on the app. That's all they care about, is just people staring at the app. But at the same time, a byproduct of that is reaffirming and changing your political views. So if you're shown these ideas and these thoughts and these political views day in, day out, you're just going to believe them more and more. And if there's people that are affirming those political views in that echo chamber, that space, then you're just going to, it's going to become more solidified of a view. And whoever challenges it is going to be seen as a bigger threat. Like, you're not going to be able to reason with them. And that's why you have such a outpour of people being so vehemently dedicated to a certain political view these days. That's why there's such a big divide. It is partially to do with big tech. I think it's a big part of it. But yeah, that comes into potential transgenderism and things like that. It's sort of a trend in it to be trans. I think that's the most worrying thing, is that it's sort of trendy. I don't know. But then, how does that then progress to transitioning into robots? Yeah, like you said, people are identifying as things like animals and things like that. So I don't think it's that far of a leap for people to start identifying as machines. And then obviously, it sounds stupid, but obviously then they can take that leap from being a human into being a machine. They have that option, if that option is there. So like, you have the option of transitioning gender at the minute. but when it becomes available, you can transition from part human to part machine. I think a lot of people might be swayed by that as an escape from these biological constraints.
It's a well strategized plan by the higher ups, take people away from their biological standpoint, and then slowly get them to accept being quote unquote different and program it as if it's all love and all this wishy-washy stuff, to then becoming eventually, when it happens, artificial. But I think one key point is really the metaverse that's going to come soon. And again, these kind of people may look at that and want to escape their reality. So that definitely is a stepping stone to the virtual reality that we are currently in. I mean, of course, you have VRs in the game consoles as well. Like me personally, I'm not a fan of VR. I've used it like 3 times and I don't see the point of it. But
no, it's a bit boring, isn't it? Like, it's okay. Like, some games are quite fun.
Yeah.
For the most part. I think the reason at the minute, though, is that the technology is quite infant and it's not really well developed. I think there will be work on it to a point where it'll seem really real and immersive. But then I think a lot of people, like you say, a lot of people will jump for that, especially kids, because it'll be so hyper stimulating. They'll be like, yeah, that looks like so much fun. I mean, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with video games, but imagine if they're 10 times more immersive and realistic, you'd be jumping at that opportunity, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then it's not like a screen. You're completely immersed. So it's going to be a lot harder for you to step out of that reality into this reality, which is so mundane in comparison, especially if like the political climate gets worse in this script.
Yeah.
If the storyline is to get worse and things are to get worse on the big stage, on the world stage, then I think a lot of people will start opting for a virtual reality where they can escape from the actual reality. Or how real is it? You don't know.
Absolutely. It's all intentional. The script plays out regardless. It's beyond the control of mankind. So, I mean, look at the age we're in, the age of Aquarius. You're at a point where now people want to have freedom, but at the same time, society is looking pretty mundane and pretty horrible. So if you send a majority of society into the metaverse, you're left with individuals now that are classed as awake in a society that may potentially be rebuilt in a way. That's how I kind of see it.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. Like you say, I think a lot of people will be like, we don't want to do this. We want to stick to the roots, and there will be like a push the other way, because every action has an equal and opposite reaction. As Newton says, I think it's Newton's 3rd law, potentially, of physics.
Yeah, I've done physics in A-level, Sophia, I remember.
Yeah. Is it his 3rd law? Am I right?
Well, say it again.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
I believe that. Yeah, I believe that's the case.
Let's go. To say I got an E in physics A-level, I think that's quite good that I've retained that knowledge. But yeah, so as much as there's like a force for all this like transhumanism and trans whatever and all this weakening of men in today's day and age, I think there's going to be an equal pushback, and I think we can already see the uproar of that with like the scaling up of self-improvement and people wanting to reconnect with nature and things like that. And yeah, so I think it's a positive thing, and we should look at it more like that. Like we can always opt to do something different than the mainstream narrative, and you can stand and look dead in the face at the mainstream narrative, have no fear of it whatsoever, and just do what you want. I think that is the main purpose of like this game, is just to be able to understand that it's just a game, and like you don't have to engage in it if you don't want to.
Absolutely. And going back to the idea of transhumanism, you've obviously the climate change thing with going zero net carbon, and what's quite interesting is we're made out of carbon. So obviously, in the mainstream and what the higher ups are looking to inject certain stuff in our bodies. Mm-hmm. I can't speak much on that, otherwise I get suspended. But
yeah, there has been an actual a really big change of events in that situation. I don't know if you've heard about it.
No, I don't
I'll
watch
tell you after the
documentary.
drink. I don't want to say on YouTube, obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah, but something quite big came out the other day about all that stuff. But yeah, with like you say with the carbon tax,
yeah.
like they're gonna taxes for being it's essentially saying, oh, we're gonna tax you for being human. If a carbon tax gets implemented through, say, like the biosecurity with the whatever the like the federal
Yeah, reserve.
government. Yeah. If they start implementing a carbon tax, if everything goes cashless, then you basically it's essentially saying you're being taxed for being human, like you say, because we are made up of carbon. So
Yes, that could make sense as to why people have opted to, take certain injections that I cannot speak about, just based off fear, because that's all it is. The injections themselves, they don't really do anything, but it's the fear behind what is being taken place to force people to make those decisions.
Yeah, it's the coercion, isn't it? It's the coercion and the manipulation of people.
Absolutely.
Oh, you can't go on holiday if you don't stick a needle in your arm. What?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this one humanoid robot called Sophia, developed in 2016 by some developers in Hong Kong, and she was actually the first robot to get citizenship in Saudi Arabia. So, when robots are getting citizenship, that just goes to show that, they could be merging alongside humans. Most importantly, in this topic, transhumans.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting as well that the word trans is at the start of it. So it's like, which is, I don't know where that stems from. I'm assuming it's transition. So like gender, transition, gender.
Yeah, transition.
But then you have other words starting with trans, like transcendence or trans. There's another word as well. I had it in my head earlier, but like transcendence and I can't remember the other one. But it's like transcending humanism, if you know what I mean. So like there's those sort of with trans. So, are we moving forward? Is this the next step of evolution? Or
yeah, I think so. But going back to Sophia, if it means wisdom and knowledge in Greek, and if you're familiar with Gnosticism, the character Sophia gave birth to the demiurge. So
yeah,
the transition from the text that the Gnostics tell us to now is the Sophia robot AI is going to give birth to other transhumans or to other AI robots, I believe, and will give knowledge to them.
Yeah, it's like Terminator, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Have a war with the robots.
Yeah. How about Iron? Yeah. How about Iron Man?
Iron Man. Yeah, I am Iron Man. I haven't got Iron Man in the background at the minute, but it was here last time we recorded this.
Yeah. Some technical issues happened there, but yeah, well, with iron. The funny thing is, we're made up of iron, so like the Iron Man story is about us, and obviously the heart that he has replaced with another thing, and he's controlled by machine, really.
Yeah, it's interesting you said as well about Sophia giving birth to the demiurge. It's almost as if this could potentially be a plot from AI. Potentially, so the demiurge is AI. Whatever created this reality is AI, and they are trying to cut through and get rid of humans, possibly, or help it evolve to the next stage.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because if you look at society now, mankind, most of mankind is not showing their value anymore in their lives. So whoever created this reality is probably thinking to its head, let's make this transition to transhuman, because the humans in this realm are just not good enough anymore.
Yeah. And they're trying to assist us and help us into transitioning into the next stage of evolution, possibly.
Yeah, totally. I can agree with that.
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. But then you have things like Elon Musk's Neuralink, where it's like Yeah, I think if that is to be the next stage of evolution, it's going to be quite a messy evolution, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to stick to the laws of nature with survival of the fittest, where there's going to be a lot of people they're going to get killed in this transition if that is what is to happen on the big stage.
Yeah, I get that. You know, I don't know about you, but I personally wouldn't want to get an implant on my head.
No, neither would I.
I don't think any of the viewers would either.
No, I'm just skeptical of like the governmental overreach more than anything.
Yeah.
The ability to test people's minds and things like that.
Yeah. Like if Elon Musk's Neuralink gets approved by the FDA or the government regulations, you know, the FDA, you know, they are pretty interesting when it comes to approving certain things.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, they're really good. The FDA are great. I mean, yeah, I can't say good. Like, can't say enough good about them. They're just such a great business. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say now. I was going to say something about Neuralink. It was just, yeah, it's just like I'm just worried about the governmental overreach and how they could just possess your mind, and they could potentially just shut you down. And imagine if they said that Neuralink was mandatory. That'd be something.
Yeah, it would be crazy. I mean, I think tests are probably undergoing now with, I think, I don't know if I was in a live stream with The Illusion last week, and he talked about how in training Liverpool players are wearing like headsets which they're being attached by wires and stuff. And because I asked him about his thoughts on transhumanism, and he gave that example, which was crazy. And obviously,
what's that?
Like in training Liverpool, they're playing. He saw a clip or somewhere in training with Liverpool players wearing some sort of headsets that they're attached with wires and stuff like that.
Oh, like to monitor the heartbeat and stuff like that.
Yeah. And he was like, you know, because most of the masses, they worship these players like a religion, they'll probably follow suit and say that's a positive thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's always like where the public consciousness is going. I think the best thing we can do is just take a step back and judge it from an objective point of view and think, like, what's my opinion on this? Not just jump to trends, which I think is the worrying thing.
Yeah.
About today's day and age, there's no room for public discourse and being able to say a different opinion. It always has to be go with the majority vote, or you're in the wrong, basically.
Absolutely. Most people jump to trends nowadays because they've just been conditioned to believe this way. You know, it's subliminal programming.
Exactly. Yeah, people can't think for themselves anymore, really.
Yeah.
I still think it's always been the case, but I think now it's just so oppressive because everyone has access to the internet and everyone has a phone. It's just like there's no escaping it. It becomes your reality almost. So like back in 100 years ago when you were just a regular farmer out in the middle of nowhere, yeah, you'd get newspaper and propaganda through posters and things like that, but you'd really be no connection to the outside world. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely. Farmer just minds his business. You know, you don't need to know what's happening 2,000 miles away in Ukraine or somewhere.
No, you really don't. Just in general, though, do you?
No.
I mean, if there's threat of war, yeah, but at the same time, like, there's no point living in fear. Like, if it happens, it happens. Like, what can you do about it?
Absolutely.
See, these things, you've just got to deal with them when it comes to it. You can't just live in fear. And there's a Robert Downey Jr. quote, which is quite ironic because we were talking about Iron Man earlier. It says, like, there's no point walking around with an umbrella waiting for it to rain. It's like, there's no point worrying all the time about what might happen.
Yeah. Live in the present, just like the story of Santa Claus going down the chimney to give us presents.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, I meant to look that up because there was like another part to that I forgot, but I can't remember now.
That's a shame, but I'm sure you'll find it sometime.
Yeah. I can't remember.
You know, you got anything else to say, or is that a
No,
wrap?
not really, not on.
Yeah, same here, guys. But yeah, it's time to wrap up the podcast. How do you find it? It's been a good episode, I feel.
Yeah, that's been a good episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been very conversational. Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Okay then, guys. So yeah, that's the end of the podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace out.
See ya.